Hello, I'm Susie Bergstrom, and today I will be telling you about transpersonal psychology. What is transpersonal psychology? Transpersonal psychology comes from the two words trans, which means beyond or through, and personal, which means a mask or facade. Together, they mean to go beyond the state of self or through self-identity. One of the goals of transpersonal psychology is to explore and discover the experience of being human. These explorations may include mysticism, meditation, expanding states of consciousness, creativity, group work, poetry, yoga, and more. Transpersonal psychology seeks to honor the self in fulfilling the ultimate human experience, reaching and transcending the highest peak internally. It does not seek to exclude other forms of psychology, rather it is inclusive. Because it embraces the psychoanalytic, humanistic, and behavioral psychologies, it is referred to as the fourth force of psychology. History of transpersonal psychology. Transpersonal psychologists were early influenced by Jung, James Rank, Assagioli, and the humanistic schools of thought. The early founders were Maslow, Tart, Dieckmann, Wilber, Grove, Walsh, and more. They were disillusioned with traditional psychology because of many limitations. Stanislav Grof, although he was a noted and trained orthodox Freudian psychotherapist and admitted that psychoanalysis had brilliant interpretations in many areas, its use was very limited. Traditional therapy has a narrow focus, takes an enormous amount of time, energy, and money, and may not be very helpful for the patient. As a trained medical doctor, he understood the workings of medicine. If you understood it, you could help the patient. The opposite is true for psychoanalysis. The doctor has a complete understanding of the science and philosophy of Freudian methods, but is unable to help the client in a practical or effective manner. This traditional therapy, where if the patient was not sick, he was considered psychologically healthy, left a lot to be desired for many in the field of psychology. Another limitation was the diminishment of other cultures. In Western thinking, where artificial intelligence, evolution, biological process, and intelligence ruled the day, this eliminated the spirit, the primitive, the uneducated. Most of these civilizations believed in the ancestors, in the spiritual, and the cultural lack of awareness bothered many of these early psychologists. Clarkson discusses Native Africans, Americans, and Aboriginals who believe that life forms are interdependent. Contrasting this is the Eurocentric view of superior intelligence and developmentally advanced societies. There was no room for these other viewpoints in traditional Western scientific thinking. Another limitation was research. Maslow and many others felt that traditional research was not relevant or helpful to the client. It focused on whatever means were available to conduct a study without considering the practicality of the study to the patient. Maslow felt that research should help solve human problems. The transpersonal topics of studies, meaning, purpose, transpersonal experience, and consciousness, were either ignored, misinterpreted, or patronized. The emphasis was on reductionism. The ideas and theories were reduced down to labeling a problem and tossing a remedy at it without understanding why the problem existed to begin with. Feeling better did not resolve life's problems. However, nor were experiential occurrences validated. There was simply no pathology for it. In this climate, transpersonal psychology was born. In 1967, transpersonal psychology was formed with the Association of Transpersonal Psychology, followed by the journal several years later. Now we'll discuss experiences and processes of transpersonal psychology. As mentioned earlier, there's a variety of techniques, rituals, events, and processes. These are all used to achieve a peak, intense, or alternative experience. The goal is to honor this experience in self transcendence. This is done through healing, body work, breath work, psychedelic ingestion of plants, which is no longer legal in this country, prayer, mysticism, and more. The process is achieved by a non ordinary state, or as Grof refers to it, as a holotropic state. The holotropic state is a state of moving towards wholeness, a higher state of being, a reclamation with our higher self. Ordinary states of consciousness, according to him, are only a partial version of ourselves. By focusing on wholeness, healing, rejoining, and connecting with oneself, one's cosmic identity is the crucial focus of the process. And he also gives examples of Mozart, who composed entire symphonies in his head, and Nobel Prize winners who came up with their achievements in non-altered states. These are different than psychotic states, where the person doesn't know what's going on, there's intellectual impairment, or maybe even amnesia. In a holotropic state, it is very subtle. The connection is present, the person is in touch with reality, knows who they are, why they're there. It's a ritual, but with each foot in a different reality, like experiencing two different realities simultaneously. In therapy, Clarkson points out several advantages to transpersonal psychology in therapy. The first is to ascertain the client's worldview. From the client's language, she learns a number of things, understanding where the client is coming from. Clarkson is very adamant that language is important. Rather than making the client conform to the language of psychotherapy, we use their language to foster understanding and mutuality. This also helps facilitate a mutual assessment of working together instead of I'm the expert, you're the patient type of approach. Also, knowing the client's spiritual interests can help the therapist use language and metaphors to guide the client. These can include life stories or mythologies within their spiritual practice or outside of their tradition. It could also reduce the cultural or collective countertransference from the therapist. Lastly, it could help establish a need for additional resources or expert consultation. If the person is suicidal, he may not be a good candidate for transpersonal therapy and may need additional referrals as well. Peake compares art therapy to the healing process of the body. If you cut your finger, it will heal itself. By using clay, movement, drawing, or other art therapies to externalize internal conflicts, allowing the expression of what is there will allow the psyche to heal itself without interference. Here is a list of some of the art therapies and more in applications of transpersonal psychology. There are several schools in the United States and worldwide that offer graduate level transpersonal psychology training. Here is a partial list in the United States. There are also institutes in other nations, especially in Britain. At this time, transpersonal psychology is not approved or accredited within the APA. However, the field has added much research to the field. Some areas include contributions of spiritual practices and traditions from Hindu, Zen, yoga, Buddhist, Tao, shamanic, Sufi, and other healings from Native American traditions. Research on meditations and consciousness, parapsychology, spiritual development, aging populations, psychedelics, anthropology studies, psychopharmacology, treatment of cult members, addiction recovery, music therapy, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, past life, and more. Here are a few organizations for transpersonal psychology. I'm interested in transpersonal psychology because although I value traditional therapy, I don't think it's effective in and of itself. I am seeking enlightenment and I feel very passionate about this topic. I'm attracted to the openness of transpersonal psychology. And recently, I just visited the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology in Palo Alto, California, where I'm considering a master's degree in women's spirituality or spiritual counseling. This concludes my report in transpersonal psychology. Thank you very much. Here is a list of references for future use.